Yeah, I think it is a lot like life. It's not all easy or all beautiful or all hard, glimmers of hope everywhere.
Hi, welcome to Inner Voices with the Australian String Quartet, the podcast where you gain first-hand insights from ASQ musicians Dale Barltrop, Francesca Hiew, Chris Cartlidge and Michael Dahlenburg on some of the blockbuster pieces of string quartet music. I'm Sam Jozeps, your host. I've loved putting this episode together for you. It's all about Robert Schumann and his string quartet in A major, Op.41 No.3. Just a quick content warning, themes in this episode include those of mental health and suicide, and refer to a time when such subjects were not so acknowledged or accepted by Western society. Content in this episode may be distressing for some listeners. Here's a quick script on Robert Schumann. Robert Schumann was a German composer, pianist and music critic who lived from 1810 to 1856, smack bang in the middle of Western classical music's Romantic era. Robert's first musical love was piano. He started out wanting to be a virtuoso pianist. Unfortunately, during his studies, he injured a finger on his right hand, leaving not just a phalange, but also his dream broken. That's when he turned fully to writing, and he wrote a lot of piano music. He also wrote what's known as lieder, songs for piano and voice. If he were alive today, perhaps he might have been a mainstay on the various top 40 pop lists we hear on radio and streaming. In fact, I'm sure without knowing it, we probably do hear remnants of his music in mainstream media today. During his time, Robert also composed 4 symphonies, 1 opera, and various orchestral, choral and chamber works, including 3 string quartets. Outside of music, Robert was one half of the European music power couple that was Clara and Robert Schumann. Clara was a brilliant concert pianist and regarded as one of the best of the Romantic era. She also composed and taught. In many ways, Clara had the life that Robert may have envisaged for himself, while he, the composer, writer, and some might say tortured artist, did most of his work alone in a room. In this episode, ASQ musicians Dale, Francesca, Chris and Michael will talk about Robert Schumann and his incredible string quartet in A major, Op.41 No.3. We actually recorded these interviews and the music itself from Mona, the Museum of Old and New Art in Hobart, Tasmania, nipaluna country, while on a national tour. You may hear a clunk or two in the background as the venue was being set up for the ASQ's performance that night. After living with their words and insights over the last couple of days, and within their recording of Schumann's work, I feel like this Robert Schumann is someone I really would have loved to have met. I'm compelled to ask this question. Is this composer and this work a proof conclusive of the symbiosis between art and love? Can art be more than just an expression? Can it in fact be? At the end of this pod, I'll try to provide an answer to this, but I want to stress that, like all good art, my take might be completely different to yours, and that's cool. Feel free to write in to me at asq@asq.com.au and let me know. From here, I'll leave it to the musicians of the ASQ.
My name is Dale Barltrop.
My name's Francesca Hiew.
My name is Chris Cartlidge.
And I'm Michael Dahlenburg from the Australian String Quartet.
I hope you enjoy this episode of Inner Voices with the Australian String Quartet.
So Robert Schumann was one of the great Romantic composers of the 19th century. He lived a difficult life. He was married to Clara Schumann, who was a famous concert pianist, and often I think he felt like he lived in her shadow.
So he was composing while Clara was this incredibly famous pianist who was touring constantly, which I imagine would have been quite a tough thing for him.
Towards the end of Schumann's life, he actually suffered from mental illness and threw himself in the Rhine.
In case you're wondering, the Rhine is a major European river that starts in the Swiss Alps, running northerly through Germany and into the Netherlands, pouring itself out into the North Sea.
And ended up actually in an asylum for the last couple of years of his life. And he was still composing exceptional music, but you can see just how troubled he was.
but he did produce some of the most beautiful music.
It would be a very interesting composer to get inside. These seem to be incredibly romantic, like in the true emotional sense of the word.
Somehow through his music he was able to express the most personal and intimate and vulnerable emotions, and this is one of the most special qualities in Schumann's music, I think. There were two characters in his music, Florestan and Eusebius, who were opposing characters, Florestan being the exuberant extrovert and Eusebius being much more the introvert. And these two sides of his personality essentially come through in almost everything he wrote.
Okay, so Florestan and Eusebius. This intrigued me so much. Someone naming the art that different sides of their soul produces makes me somehow feel that I'm not alone. Not that I've done that before, but I feel it's something quite human. Anyway, I spent the best part of a work morning down an internet rabbit hole reading about Schumann's Florestan and Eusebius, and there's lots of great literature out there to spend time in.
Which is really, really fascinating.
Well, I can tell you that when I joined the quartet, I made a list of pieces that I really want to play in my time with ASQ, and at the top of that list was Schumann, particularly this third string quartet. I admire him as a composer. Whilst he only churned out 3 quartets, he did it over this summer that he'd been on tour with his incredible wife, Clara Schumann. She was having this massive European concert tour, and he sort of left that tour early and he went and did this massive, intensive study of all the quartets that had come before him, of Haydn and Beethoven and Mozart. He then penned just these 3 quartets.
He worked in this sort of very intense manner, just completely immersed in the genre.
And they reflect so much about his breadth of knowledge and his ability to learn things so incredibly fast. But also his deep love for his wife, which is sort of permeating every bar all the way through this piece. And I just think that such a brilliant but tortured artist is somebody I'd like to play.
I love this piece of music. I got a bit obsessed with it actually earlier in the year when I found out we were performing it. I listened to it over and over and over and over and over again on Spotify. It makes me feel a lot of things, and when life gets distracting and you don't feel the right thing at the right moment, you go back and you listen to it again, waiting for those emotions to flow. It's very, very emotional piece of music. Yeah.
So this quartet is just beautiful. There's a lot of pianistic quality in it. There's a lot of ebb and flow, a lot of give and take, push and pull, and it creates this real lushness and this real beauty of character throughout the whole quartet.
It starts out with this falling motive, a falling fifth.
This sighing, falling fifth.
Which essentially is the Clara motive.
We have this slow introduction where the motive is passed around.
It's just perfect in the way that he sets up this motive that tries to start and then tries to start again, and then finally it all just flows out.
And all the way through this quartet, this is his little love note to Clara.
That just contains in it so many feelings of, well, I mean, if I could describe them, you wouldn't need the music. So I don't have the words, but the music is enough.
I just think it's absolutely beautiful.
The second movement is a theme and variations, which I think is an incredible example of a theme and variations. It's quite unusual that the scherzo movement of a quartet would be used as a theme and variations.
In music, a theme and variations is a structure or architecture of music that starts out with a certain musical theme. It's often a simple, memorable melody that you might be able to sing back. There's no set length to the theme, but if you listen hard, you might be able to tell when it starts and stops. What follows this is a variation of the theme. It could vary in a bunch of ways: different timing, rhythm, melody, harmony. Throughout the theme and variations section, there can be as many different variations to the theme as the composer likes.
He does it masterfully, particularly the way he uses rhythm in that movement to kind of throw off the beat. He loves doing this. This is a very typical device of Schumann, to kind of move the beat or blur the beat, so you don't really know where it comes, and it gives a real feeling of restlessness. And this pervades the whole theme and variations, and actually the first movement and the last movement as well. So we get to the fourth variation in the second movement, and mostly we've been in a very sort of wistful mood, and then all of a sudden the music explodes into an incredibly energetic, visceral statement. It's one of the most arresting moments of the quartet. Including the gorgeous slow movement, the third movement, which is just such an exquisite depiction of love and pain and sorrow and everything in between.
Yeah, it's very powerful, very simple tune that and then a pang of longing or missing, changes the whole mood from this beautiful song into a kind of turmoiled, complicated ball of emotions that then comes back to the simple song melody. It's like when you go away, you remember someone that is not with you, and you think, oh, that's lovely, I've remembered them. And then you realise that they're not here, and that changes,
My favourite bit is in the third movement, about 75% of the way through, after the sort of development section, in the middle of this song, this sort of aria that Dale starts and gets carried through. There's this sort of repose at the end where the tune comes back quite affected by everything that had come before it. Most notably, there's this pizzicato of triplets against duplets that I do against the tune. And it just has this ability to manifest a lot of gravity in this really sort of tender way that really only a few composers utilize that technique. Brahms was another one who sort of triplets against duplets creates this sort of rub. And it doesn't have to be loud and it doesn't have to be furious, but it can actually have such intensity and beauty. It's genuinely one of my favorite bits of music, period.
This quartet, it's full of love and joy and emotion and vulnerability, and it really runs the gamut of emotions. But the last movement particularly is very joyful, it's very upbeat, and it goes through various episodes, but this underlying kind of galloping rhythm that takes us to a very exuberant finish, I think ultimately gives the impression of happiness.
As a full work, it is just so perfectly put together. The second movement just offers so much variety and interest and development. And then this third movement that is just absolutely heart-wrenching, but hopeful. And the last movement is, oddly joyful. Yeah, it's an incredible work. I think his writing is extremely human, and he obviously went through quite a lot mentally. And in the music, that's very much reflected. Even, when you have these really beautiful moments, they're quickly juxtaposed by moments of almost terror. I think it's a sort of piece that can envelop you. I hope people see the human side of him, see, yes, the struggle that he went through, but also this very dedicated man.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cleanser from life, It makes me feel a certain way, and when I listen to it, I know I'm going to feel that way. And when I want to feel that way, this is what gets me there, It could take me out of where I am and put me where I want to be. It's escapism. For me, at least, it's escapism. It's getting me out of all of the things that make life difficult and complicated, and just listening to something beautiful that encapsulates emotions that we all know so well, and you get to feel them without the personal effects of them. You get to feel longing and suffering and mixture of painful emotions without them being your emotions. It's like you're going into the switchboard of your brain, and you're pressing all these buttons that make you feel. I love it. It's very, very special.
I guess that's the beautiful thing about music, is that everybody feels something different. Although it was really interesting, we did a school concert and we played the third movement, and we said, what do you think this is about? And a room full of kids, and some people said, it makes me feel happy and it makes me feel sad. And then this one girl came up with this incredible story where she said, well, I think it's about this man who meets a woman and then they fall in love, but then the man goes off to war and then he dies. And there's all this sadness. And it's incredible that a child that had not been preloaded with any kind of information happened to stumble across perhaps the intended sentiment that Schumann had put into every bar of this piece, that really was about his deep love and affection for Clara, his incredible wife. So I don't know what you're going to get out of it, but I'm pretty sure Schumann was pretty darn good at making you feel something. So whether you feel that or you feel something different, I think he wouldn't mind so long as you were moved.
Yeah, I think it is a lot like life. It's not all easy or all beautiful or all hard, glimmers of hope everywhere.
Glimmers of hope everywhere. Those final 4 words from Francesca. I'm going to save them for a rainy day. In putting this podcast together, I've learnt so much, not just about music and Schumann as a composer, but also, about life. About what struggle is to us humans. About the tussle of good versus bad, Florestan versus Eusebius, love versus heartbreak. And yet, through all the turmoil, if we can manage to remember to take a breath, relax our shoulders, and look around, we might find, floating around us like speckles of sunlight refracted through water, glimmers of hope everywhere. And at the end of it all, maybe for Schumann, the one place he found hope was in his love for Clara. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Inner Voices with the Australian String Quartet. The music you heard in this podcast was a live recording of Robert Schumann's piano quintet in E-flat major, Opus 44, performed by the Australian String Quartet with guest pianist Andrea Lamb, recorded and mastered by Alistair McLean. And Schumann's String Quartet in A major, Opus 41 No.3, performed by the Australian String Quartet, recorded and mastered by Caleb Miller. For every episode of Inner Voices with the Australian String Quartet, we commission and feature an original piece of music by a contemporary artist, using samples from that episode's subject. This episode's sampler was created by Jason Sweeney, a Ghana-based composer, musician and filmmaker. This episode was recorded on nipaluna country, Hobart, Tasmania, and produced and edited on Kaurna country, South Australia, at the University of Adelaide. The theme music for this podcast was created by Ghana-based composer, producer and multi-instrumentalist Adam Page. Learn more and listen to all of the music featured in this podcast at asq.com.au/podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of Inner Voices with the Australian String Quartet. If there were a tourist destination that boasted all of the string quartets in the world, consider this series your Quartets on a Shoestring travel guide. Thanks for listening.